Good afternoon. My name is Shelley Young. I am a very proud employee of the South Noah Branch Library, also known as the SoNo Branch Library. On behalf of Sherelle Harris, Assistant Director of the Noah Public Library, I would like to welcome all of you to this afternoon's SPED Matters program series. Today's program is part one of a two-part offering on executive functioning. We offer this series in collaboration with SPEDNet Wilton. Now, I will turn the program over to Eve Kessler to introduce our wonderful panelists. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Eve Kessler. I'm the Executive Director and founder of SPEDNet Wilton. We're really happy to be dealing with executive functions. Again, everybody asks to have more and more and more information about executive function challenges. We have Allison Tables and Susan Chandler, partners in effective counseling and fidelity educational advisement in Stanford, which supports students with LD, ADHD, anxiety disorders, and autism spectrum disorders and challenges that require social and emotional support. Allison is a therapist, school counselor, and executive function coach. She provides executive functioning and social skills support for children, adolescents, and young adults from a relational and educational perspective. Susan is a special educator and administrator, inclusion specialist, and educational evaluator. She helps students identify their learning styles and develop strategies to address their needs, improve their self-determination, and acquire self-advocacy skills. What we're going to do is hold questions till the end, unless you guys see something up on the chat that you say, oh, I really should answer this while we're doing the presentation. SPEDNet Wilton will have the recording of this on our website, www.spednetwilton.org, and the library will too, I think, Shelley? Okay. And so you'll be able to access it or share it with your partner or your children at any point later. And the slides will also be up on our website, as well as additional information about executive function skills and Allison and Susan. So thank you. Let's start.
Thank you, Eve. So thank you so much for that introduction. We were going to say a little bit about ourselves, but I think you summed it up for us. So
You're Allison.
I'm Allison Tables. And this is
Hi, I'm Sue Chandler. Pleasure.
So today we're going to talk about executive functioning, which we call the brain CEO. And we're focusing on younger children. So what is executive functioning? Executive functioning are skills that are the basis for planning, organizing, and initiating and following through with tasks, assignments, and problems inside and outside of school. Many students with weak executive functioning skills forget assignments, can't complete long-term projects, have trouble focusing, and experience difficulty with change. These students need to be taught explicit skills in order to become successful in school and in life after school. Simply put, EF skills are necessary life skills. So as we continue throughout our presentation, we're going to explain that executive functioning, with those with executive functioning issues, need external supports because the internal supports are not there. As we continue, you'll understand what we're talking about, but a lot of these kids present as, parents will say, just do your work, and then they don't do that. They don't understand what do your work means. We need to give external schedules, alarms, calendars, game plans, etc. So we'll continue to discuss this.
Okay, so in terms of executive functioning, there are three domains through which we are looking at when we're developing supports for students and understanding where the executive functioning deficits may actually be. With working memory is the skill that helps students or children hold information in their mind while they're completing a task. It's important during note-taking, math problems, and multi-step directions. Also, inhibitory control, which is really important for students and children to be able to pause when they are experiencing either an event or a situation or instruction. Before they respond, they need to pause and be able to control their attention, their behavior, their thoughts, or emotions, and override any external distractions. Inhibitory control is also called self-control, and it enables children to focus on what is being asked of them and suppressing any distracting stimuli. It's where we call that the response to an event, but being able to wait and pause. There's the expression, everything comes to those who wait. And so this really does need to be a skill that we are supporting our young children with, so they understand why that's important. And that immediacy of reaction can interfere with their working memory, which we discussed, and also with mental flexibility. Mental flexibility is the ability to be able to shift between one task to another and to be able to change your course of action based on other reactions to you. Mental flexibility is also being able to see multiple sides to a situation, and also someone else's other point of view. So socially, this is very important, but as children progress academically, it's also important in reading comprehension. When you're looking at, an author's point of view, a character's motivation, and understanding that flexibility in order to academically be able to participate appropriately. We have a video that we believe really helps to explain all of these three areas and helps to understand the subcategories that executive functions require in order for students to be able to be successful not only in school, but in their daily lives and also in their relationships within their family.
So here we're going to play.
We're going to play this video, and I think this will help to really sort of encapsulate and visualize for everybody the importance of executive functioning.
Science tells us that brains, minds, are built, not born. And at the center of this dynamic architecture are a set of skills called executive function and self-regulation.
Children's self-regulation and executive function are key ingredients in their lifetime performance. It's not just about learning language or learning numbers or learning colors. We have to be able to work effectively with others, with distractions, with multiple demands. These actually are skills that contribute to the productivity of the American workforce.
Just look at your shapes. What should you have done next?
Educators, I think, are looking for just this sort of thing. And when we describe what we mean by executive function, they say, yes, that's it. That's exactly, the problem. These kids, they can tell me these rules, but they can't actually use them.
What's this? A toolbox.
A tool.
What is executive function?
Safety goggles. Probably the best way to think about it is sort of like an air traffic control system in the brain. Just like an air traffic control system has to manage lots of airplanes going on lots of runways and really exquisite timing and so on. A child has to manage a lot of information, avoid distractions. We really think of it as involving working memory and inhibitory control and mental flexibility. Take a situation where a child is having to take turns. So first of all, the child has to have inhibitory control. The child has to be able to stop whatever he or she is doing and let the other child take a turn. But when it's your turn again, you also have to remember what it is you're supposed to be doing. So that pulls on working memory. If the children who are taking the turns after you do something unpredictable, You have to be able to adjust what you're going to do next. And that requires mental flexibility. Children who are struggling with these capacities often look like children who just aren't paying attention, or children who are deliberately not controlling themselves. Don't have self-regulation, you act out and the teacher puts you in timeout, and so then you miss part of the learning that's going on, and then you are more upset because you're behind, and so you act out, and so you get this downward spiral.
How does executive function develop?
7 and +4.
In little children, and even in the infant and toddler years, you begin to see the roots of executive functioning skills. What's going on in our brains is unbelievably intricate and complicated. The prefrontal cortex, or the front third of the brain, is important for executive function. But it's more than just prefrontal cortex. This region doesn't act alone. It's involved in controlling your behavior through its interactions with all other parts of the brain. The brain goes from a situation where you've got nearest neurons communicating very strongly with each other and ignoring the rest of the brain, to these widespread networks that are connecting these different areas. Executive function changes over the life course. It improves radically over the first few years.
I got a match.
It continues to improve throughout adolescence. It's not until early adulthood that you have the adult type networks that are very strongly activated that connect different brain regions together.
Let's take notes.
Also, we believe that executive functions can be trained.
It's just like going to the gym. So the more you practice in these areas, the stronger the capacity is likely to become, because you're hoping to strengthen those neural connections.
Aha! You're at 24.
Slowly but surely, you're going to be able to step back, and that child's going to go into the world with these skills where they can get along with other people, change rules, and they can be flexible, and they can accomplish new things, and they're unafraid.
I got bit by my dog in my arm. Oh dear.
If we don't learn these skills during the childhood and adolescent years when they're coming online, we are really ill-equipped as an adult to hold a job, to maintain a marriage, to raise children, to get along with each other, to basically be part of a civil society.
You're okay.
Just bear with us.
Just gotta get this thing back up. Okay, here I go.
Okay, so I think what was exciting and some really good takeaways from the YouTube video that we were able to just experience is that, executive functioning skills change over time. They're also skills that can be trained and strengthened. And it's really important that the more aware we are of the executive functioning skills and subcategories that we're going to be speaking about today are reinforced at various stages, developmentally appropriate to where the students are in terms of their cognitive abilities and functioning. So when we were talking about working memory and mental flexibility and inhibitory control, I think the one really good example was when they were talking about game playing, being able to hold in your mind what the task is, being able to inhibit your response so someone else can also participate, and then being flexible enough that if a rule changes during that game playing, that you're able to still participate appropriately. And so those are the three main brain functions, the three types. And so the other areas that we look at when we're working with children for executive functioning are the sustained attention, task initiation, planning and prioritizing, organization, time management, metacognition, and also goal-directed persistence. The other thing that I believe is very important for us to recognize is that children are not born with these skills, but have the potential to develop them. And to ensure that children develop these subcategories that I just mentioned, we as educators and parents need to help strengthen these emerging skills over the course of their education.
Okay, so now we're going to explain, we're going to have a little story about Benny and Lewis. And this story explains how EF deficits impact children. So Lewis, as you can tell throughout the story, has pretty strong EF skills and poor Benny does not. So Benny and Lewis are in the same class. For math, the teacher had them gather around while she taught them about fractions, and both of them understood it well. The teacher told them to go back to their desks and finish the front side of the paper and then to finish the back side for homework. So remember, both of them understood it well. So as we talk about these EF deficits, it's not about academic ability, or cognitive ability either. It's about being able to show they have this cognitive ability, and we need to, as Sue just said, enhance and create external executive functioning supports for them, because they do not have them automatically in their brain.
Okay, so when we're looking at Lewis went to his seat, he got out his pencil and he finished the front side of the paper at his desk. Then he put the paper in his homework folder, zipped it up in the backpack to take home before leaving school that day. He tidied up his desk, he threw away everything he didn't need, he double checked to make sure he put the homework where it was needed. Here we see that Lewis has not only the academic aptitude to complete the academic task, but he also has the executive functioning skills such as organization, task initiation, as well as persistence in terms of being able to follow through and then planning what he needs in order to bring home with him. We will now see Benny, who unfortunately does have some difficulty. Difficulty with executive functioning and how that impacts him. Again, it's really important to understand academic aptitude is not the question here. Benny goes back to his desk. He can't find his pencil. He searches in his desk, and because it's so crammed with other things in his desk, he's not able to find what he needs. As he searches, papers fall out, materials fall to the ground. He finally asks the teacher for a new pencil. Goes back to his seat, but now he can't find his paper. Searching, eventually finds it crumpled up under his foot. It took him 15 minutes to get started, and by then, he's forgotten how to do the problem. So here we're seeing working memory being impacted. We're seeing inhibitory control being impacted, and we're also seeing that the EF weaknesses that Benny exhibits are in organization, having necessary materials available when the task is required to begin. And then this also impacts his ability to get started, his ability to have within his working memory the information he needs to complete the task, and then it affects his work completion.
So Benny kept getting distracted by the mess around him. The bell rang, so he hurried and shoved the paper in his backpack, along with his pencil, water bottle, and lunchbox. So as you see, this backpack is filled with stuff. I also work as a middle school counselor. And so I see kids with backpacks like this, and it is crazy. There's permission slips. There's things from years, I don't know, from September in January crammed down. So we see this all the time.
And so in terms of Benny gets home, and we know that his backpack has many things in there that may or may not be necessary for his ability to be able to complete his work. But what he finds is that his water bottle has spilled over everything. And of course, his homework now is not able to be completed because his homework has been ruined, and he feels as if he has to relearn everything the next day just to get caught up. What happens with children like this is that now it's impacting his self-confidence, his self-image, and his motivation. So we're seeing an emotional overflow with Benny, and that will continue to obviously chip away at a student's self-confidence and self-image academically, and can also then play a large role in their emotional security as they go through their school years.
So now you see these two desks. Lewis's stuff is neatly organized. You see a science and math book and pencil perfectly placed. His folders in his backpack. And then Benny's. It's a mess. You can't find anything. There's papers crammed in the desk, papers crammed in the backpack. This is what happens to Benny at the end of the day. Now, this could be compared to, as the kids get older or younger, cubbies when they're younger and lockers when they're older. The way we can support this is obviously Benny isn't able to do it himself. So maybe Benny could have checklists, like maybe a checklist on his desk to say where everything goes, or a picture of where things should be placed. Obviously, he would also need help with having his backpack and his desk checked and cleaned out. You know, he'd probably have to get into the habit of that with a teacher to support him, to explain what he needs to do.
So again, Benny does have the academic strengths that can assist him in meeting with success, but he also has some weaknesses in executive functioning. And executive functioning skills, we know, are teachable. They're skills that can be developed through childhood, adolescence, and even in adulthood. So as Allison was saying, we need to provide those external cues, those external reinforcements. We need to help organize Benny's environment for him, because Benny's not able to do so. And when there's a poor fit between a task and an environment, you'll find that the child, as difficult as it is, they do try to take control. But the control may end up being negative by avoiding the task, escaping the task, or just at one point feeling as if they're not capable and they're not able to do anything. And then the children with EF challenges may appear to be lazy, irresponsible, or unmotivated, and that is not the case. So what we're going to do is to learn some skills that can help families and children with EF deficits, as we do not want children to lose self-motivation, confidence, and become impacted in many areas of their life.
So now how can we help our Bennies? We're going to review all these supports, as Sue mentioned. As we look, we're going to go over how to organize time, organize tasks, and organizing materials. Now, as you could tell in the story with Benny and Lewis, these three areas with time, tasks, and materials are what derailed Benny. That's what got him off track. That's what he couldn't do without the supports. We're also going to discuss prioritizing tasks, prioritizing materials, improving working memory, improving self-monitoring, and promoting positive behavior. So now, as Sue said, we're turning our presentation over to what do we do with our Bennies?
So what was reinforced in our video was also understanding the prefrontal lobe and how that impacts students with executive functioning deficits. Your child may understand the value of being organized, but may not have the slightest idea how to get organized. And that is unfortunately Benny. This is where we need to become the frontal lobe for our students and our children who have difficulty with the executive functioning.
So in order to do so, like if you look at the pieces of what the frontal lobe entails, it's responsible for movement, reasoning, behavior, memory, decision-making, personality, planning, judgment, initiative, inhibition, and mood. So we're going to talk about how we can support our students, our children, who can't do this themselves. So for example, for inhibition, that means, we're doing something without thinking. So we've got to have external consequences so that the children can, they won't be able to do what, so that so that we can support them in making positive decisions. Obviously, decision making is in there, and then planning. We also have to help our students with planning. Maybe we'll go into this, but with calendars and various tools, and memory. We'll have to help them with reminders. These are things that they can't remember on their own. And so as we continue throughout our presentation, you'll see what kind of supports we're talking about.
And so before we move on, what I wanted to reinforce is that if we look at the frontal lobe, okay, that is where the performance is expected. And in terms of when we take a look at the brain, all of the knowledge in the back part of the brain is what's developed there. And what we need to do is, as we continue to support executive functioning, we need to build a bridge and help with those external cues and external either visual, verbal, physical prompts that help students take that knowledge that they have and are actually able to activate and then be able to perform those executive functioning tasks in order to be successful.
So I mentioned calendars before. How do we help our children organize time? So we can use a family calendar to record important information. This also helps coordinate everyone's schedules. And this is a modeling tool for your children that you're using a calendar to stay organized. So this is something that, we do to help ourselves. Also help your children set calendars, either on their phones, electronic, or on paper. That can be updated with commitments and tasks whenever you update the family calendar. So for example, let's say, all right, we've got a soccer game on Wednesday. Benny, don't forget, you've got to update. Let me see you do it right now. Okay, you're updating on your calendar. You have the soccer game on Wednesday at 4. So you can schedule them out. A monthly calendar is nice so that so the children can see what we're doing from the beginning of the month and the end of the month and have a more holistic understanding. And you can encourage your child to schedule these activities themselves and fun things like activities with friends and games. I mean, I have a good friend who does this. She has a calendar right near her charging station where all the phones and electronics are. So everyone always looks at it because they've got to plug in their phones. And she's got 2 boys and a husband. So they add whatever they need to or erase. It's on a dry erase board. And I think it works well for them because they both have very busy sports schedules. And then how to help our children organize tasks. So teach your child to think of a long-term project as a mental movie. Break down complex tasks into manageable chunks like little movie scenes, or you could even use like a comic book scene. Use a whiteboard or sheet of paper to map out tasks. Encourage your child to write down important tasks on a calendar and allocate time accordingly. So you can teach your child to estimate the time each task will take by tracking his or her time while working. So you can say, Benny, you've got, English, math, and science to do. How long do you think English is going to take? 30 minutes? Okay, let's see. Let's time it and see. Were you right? Was it really 30 minutes? So he gets in the habit of saying, okay, I've got an hour and a half to do homework. I have 3 different assignments. How can I manage my time appropriately? Also, sometimes with older kids, with book reports or papers, you can break, I just worked with someone who was doing an essay, and you can break down, rather than saying, okay, we've got this big book report due, in a week, each day we'll do pieces of it and model that behavior for your kids. So, I mean, there's a lot of work in the forefront, but that's what's necessary to give them the skills and the tools for success later on.
So in terms of continuing to organize and organizing materials, Allison was speaking about, time management, which is a way to organize as well. And time is such an abstract concept for so many of our students. So as Allison was saying, timers are also something that can really help when students are looking at what they believe the amount of time it will take in order to complete an assignment, and then asking them to truly, with your assistance, monitor that time so that time becomes more concrete for them. But when we're looking at organizing materials, it's really important that we set up the environment and we meet the child where they are in terms of their development and in terms of their executive functions. So making sure that materials are easily accessible so that it encourages independence. Making sure that materials are sorted in different sections is very helpful. All writing materials should be in one location. Reference materials and any support materials such as calculators or dictionaries or graphic organizers should also be easily available for your child when they're completing homework or an assigned task. Also help them identify a regular time during the week, as Allison had talked about with Benny and his backpack, in terms of organizing their backpack, working to also make their workplace clear and available so that they're able to focus and concentrate on what it is that they're required to do. The other thing that we find that works really well with all students, but younger students and also middle school students, is really using brightly colored folders, either for individual subjects, each folder could be a different color, or for one folder for homework, one folder for permission slips, one folder for work that needs to be completed or that is completed and needs to be turned in. I'm working with a student in middle school, and I was setting up her study skill area or her desk and support area in her home. And we organized very similar to what we're talking about. But what we also did is we were able to find colored bracelets so that for her 4 academic courses, English, math, science, and social studies, she would put, when she was coming home, I said, you have to put all your bracelets on your wrist and go through your electronic notebook and see what assignments need to be completed. Write them down. And when you've completed English, take your blue bracelet off and know that you've completed English. When you've completed science, take your yellow bracelet off. So that was also a kinesthetic reinforcement for her in terms of feeling that she had the control and the visual support, and then the physical removal of a bracelet to help her recognize I've completed all of my tasks when all of my bracelets have been removed and they've been placed where they belong.
So how do we help our children prioritize tasks? So we help kids prioritize homework tasks based on due dates, difficulty level, and the level of stress they have about the tasks. Encourage them to list the steps needed to complete long-term projects and help them sequence tests logically. For instance, before looking at vocabulary words in a dictionary, they could alphabetize the list first. Use what, where, when, how questions. So for example, what happens a lot, especially in middle school, and I mean, I'm not sure at the elementary level, but there's Power School or whatever program your school uses. And this shows, the grades kids have live. So, okay, right now you turn in 2 English assignments and you have a B. So what happens, what I've noticed from 5th grade to 6th grade, or, when kids enter middle school, all of a sudden, all these classes are being graded. They're like, wait a second, hold on. I just did all this work, and how do I have an F in science? I did all these assignments. And then we look on Power School and we see, oh, wait a second, you did 5 assignments that were worth 10 points and did not do the assignment that's worth 100 points. This is why you have an F. So I think kids have a hard time understanding what assignments are worth more points and how you can prioritize. Also, I had another student that had a big assignment to do, and before chunking it into small steps, she was completely overwhelmed and crying. She thought it was unmanageable. But once someone else gave her the modeling of how to break things down, then she was like, oh, I can totally do this. So the goal is for that model that you do as a parent or a teacher to then be the template the kid uses throughout the rest of their life.
So in terms of prioritizing materials, again, teaching children to review their homework and gather materials before starting work so that everything is collected before they start working. Store most commonly used items within easy reach and allowing for easy accessibility. This also provides students with the opportunity to, as Allison said, when we model what's expected, and then we set up the environment to meet their needs, it increases their ability to have the independence in order to complete a task. And we know success breeds success. You know, there's the old saying that, you know, I do, we do, you do. So as a parent, you can model and then do it together with your child, and then give your child the confidence, as long as the environment is set up for success, for that child to now say, I can do this as well. So working memory, we know, is an extremely important executive functioning skill that students are able to develop over time, but we have to make sure that we are providing them with the support that they need. And so when we're looking at a child's weakness, we want to play to their strengths. So for example, if you have a child and you know that they're a visual learner, you would like to make sure that any information that's provided in an auditory manner or modality is also supported by the visual, either steps, directions, and make sure that that's provided to the student. Sometimes we can also work with manipulative. So for example, with mathematics, math can be a very abstract concept for many children. And so utilizing manipulatives and reinforcing that kinesthetic modality with using blocks or Legos to help complete addition and subtraction really helps to bring that to a concrete level so that they're not having to hold so much in their working memory. Also, breaking up information. Allison spoke about working with a student who had, you know, a research paper and it was overwhelming. Well, breaking that up for young children, even if they have, let's say, 3 pages to read during a night, and so they're overwhelmed by that, breaking that up, maybe reading a paragraph, asking them what was in that paragraph, reinforcing that conversation, and showing them how they can break down information and feel more confident about being able to accomplish that. Using working memory as a floodlight. So what we like to do is to make sure that we've engaged that working memory and helping students to really understand that the focus of what they need to be available to learn must be spotlighted, and so that they're able to focus on one thing at a time, and we can work on this with children so that they can understand essential from non-essential information, and being able to understand the importance of working memory, being able to hold that information in their mind in order to accomplish tasks. And it also requires mental manipulation of information, and that can be very difficult for students who may have attentional difficulties and their focus isn't available for when the instruction has been provided. What we need to do then is to reinforce that with the floodlight, and also write down the essential information step by step. Have students also restate the directions that they've been provided, so we know that they're processing that information, and pre-teach framework of new and novel information, highlighting, floodlighting the most important aspects.
So how do we help our children learn to self-monitor and self-check? We encourage children to think out loud. You can model this behavior by talking through your own checklist, reviewing and revising plans, and discussing how to avoid errors. I mean, I'm always doing that. I'm like, okay, wait, what do I have to do now? First, I'm going to go this. And I always say it to my daughter. I'm like, okay, Mia, we're going to do, first, mommy's going to do this. Then while I'm doing this, you can get ready. And then, once mommy's finished blow drying her hair, we're going to go. And so then she knows what to expect. So she knows I turn the blow dryer on, and then she starts getting ready. So, I don't even mean to do it, but I'm, helping her plan and talk out loud and talk about steps. Reading comprehension, encourage your child to read single sentences and then check for understanding, when we break down our stories or whatever we're doing, and discuss characters and connections between themes and details. So we could also bring it back to, so let's say a favorite show of theirs. You could read a book and say, how is this similar to Paw Patrol or whatever show your kid likes? Just to get into the habit of bridging connections and themes.
So we have some examples of checklists that can help students self-monitor and reinforce the metacognitive skill development. And metacognitive skills very important for students to be able to review what they have done and to sort of assess how they've been able to accomplish a task. Many students, again, without the inhibitory control and working memory development may have difficulty with metacognitive skills. So it's important that we help them look at what they've been able to accomplish and how well they've been able to accomplish. And if there's been some difficulty, what was that difficulty, and problem solve with your child. So this might be a before school checklist that you can utilize with your child. When I get to class checklist, this would be very helpful for Benny, of course. And also for Benny, before I leave school checklist. And then, starting work and appropriate breaks. And this can also help with that time management that we were talking about, helping time become more concrete for our children and our students. And then a homework checklist. What I think is very important about these checklists is that we know that parents and teachers and school and community need to work closely together and collaborate and have the same language. Use the same language when you're working with your child that's utilized in school, and also, support teachers understanding how you speak with your child and what language you may be using when you're reinforcing task completion.
And then I know we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes. I just want to go through this, and we have one little video. But so then to help our children self-monitor and self-check, I help kids come up with silly phrases or songs as reminders. Like, for example, and this is something that's important to see what the teachers are doing, because they're the ones who are the professionals on how to, maintain and carry this information. So, for example, today, my daughter, who's only 4.5, she was saying, I go, what's after Wednesday? And she obviously had to say Thursday, but she kept saying Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to remember where Thursday was. So, there's all these different little, games you can play that teachers may use, that you may come up with just to help your kids remember. And for study and test taking, you can review study guides, and then also include built-in breaks for exercise and fun. So a lot of our kids with executive functioning deficits have ADHD as well. And one of the studies has shown that, kids can have 3 minutes of exercise and 10 minutes of work. 3 minutes of exercise, 10 minutes of work. So you can see what works for your kid. And maybe, when you have a study schedule for him or her to start their homework, they always have, I was talking to my friend who has a daughter that is very active and has ADHD. And I said, this is what she's going to have to do her homework. She can't just sit and get it all done. You have to show her the schedule where she'll do jumping jacks or something and then get back to do work. And then
okay, and so again, right, tips to promote positive behavior in children with executive function dysfunction, because again, it definitely will impact the emotional, social, and self-image, self-confidence that children have. So it's really important to communicate with teachers, school staff about the efforts that you're providing to help regulate your child's behavior and your child's ability to be able to complete tasks at home, and also to reinforce positive consequences. As we were saying, the external for our children is very important. We need to set the environment up. We need to set the consequences up, but we should do so in a very positive way. And make sure that students, if you feel your child has executive functioning difficulties that are comprehensive and really impacting not only the academic, but the social, the emotional, you may want to speak with your teacher or a school psychologist or social worker and just see whether there is a need for a comprehensive assessment to see if there's learning challenges that are impacting the executive functioning of your child. There are certainly informal executive functioning assessments that can be provided, and then there are formal executive functioning assessments that can help in terms of creating even more of a support within the school environment if necessary.
So, as we as educators, parents, and support professionals have the potential to significantly impact academic, social, and emotional success through explicit executive function instruction. So I just have a little video to wrap it up, and then we'll open up for questions. Just give me 1 second. Oops. Oops, that's not the video. Hold on. Okay. What else do I know? And I'll stop our screen share.
So as you can see, everyone's very happy when we're able to be productive and we're able to follow through with the task that's been assigned to us. And we as parents and educators have the responsibility to be able to support the development of executive functioning skills and externally be that frontal lobe that our children need until it becomes internalized. And again, I do, we do, you do. And that's really what we are looking to accomplish when we're working with students and we're working with families in terms of executive functioning success.
So now we open up to questions. Let me see what's on the chat here. So
Oh, the bracelet.
I do too. I love the bracelet idea, and I
Yes,
guess
right.
a trip to the Container Store would be a good trip too.
Yes, right, exactly. And I'll tell you, this young lady is in 8th grade. She's had a very difficult time, especially middle school, as Allison was, discussing, that the academic requirements and the independence that's expected as you move from elementary to middle school becomes overwhelming. And so being able to, she's very artistic too, so being able to bring a strength of hers, as we said, let's work with strengths of our children, which is, her visualization and her interest in art and colors, and utilize that to help an area where she's really struggling and organizing and planning and time management and task completion. And when I left the home the other day, after we had organized her study area, the mother texted me and said, she's been working down there for the last hour and a half. I'm so excited. So, you know, it really is about meeting children where they are and about being their external support until they can internally, you know, obviously develop these skills. We know that executive functioning can be trained and strengthened, and those neural connections can be made. So there's a lot of positive excitement about knowing that we can have an impact on our children and on their executive functioning development.
Any more questions? You can put them in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, guys. I love those ideas. That the whole concept of meeting kids where they are is so important, because parents don't always know where their kids are.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they assume that, oh, my older kid could do this and this and this when he was whatever the age is. And so my other kids are going to be able to do it too, when they really have to go child by child.
Absolutely.
That's, you know, that's something that is sometimes hard for parents to understand, but that's a terrific.
Oh, so, okay. So we have another question here. Do you guys provide executive functioning services, or can you refer one? Coaching? Yes, we do.
So on our
That's what we
website,
do.
I guess, I don't know, Eve, should we put the website on your website?
Is it on the PowerPoint?
Yeah, you're right.
Is it on the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it is. And I just put it in the chat.
Oh, sure.
So if you guys want to go to our website, and you can email us from there. Sue and I both provide services.
Right. And it's also on their PowerPoint, which is going to be on our website and on the SoNo Library's website.
Right.
Right. Thank you for this opportunity.
Is it covered by insurance? Well,
okay.
for my services, you can submit for reimbursement, but we don't take insurance. So if your insurance will reimburse, we can give you a receipt for reimbursement.
Angel texted me privately. She said that if your child age 4 was tested to not have autism, then is EF still a possible diagnosis?
Yes, executive functioning, but we also want to be careful about diagnosing a child that young with any area of disability. There could be areas of challenge, and so that child may need to have the concepts and the tasks and directions presented in a different manner. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a disability, but it's important to certainly work with your pediatrician and to work with the experts either in the pre-K program, or if the child is about to enter kindergarten, I know that there's screening that they do as well.
But then she said, we had a PPT meeting and there was no testing on executive functioning. The referral was for attention issues. Should I go back and request? There really are no social emotional issues, mainly academic.
Okay, so in terms of, you know, it's difficult to not have the assessments in front of us.
Yeah.
One thing that I do as a special educator and was a special education administrator, educational advisement, I can sit with families, go through the assessments that have been provided and take a look at what assessments you may want to request that may not have been completed, or explain in a way that allows you to understand why the assessments are providing you with the information that they are providing and what exactly may be an identified disability. Attention definitely impacts executive functioning, and we know that, and it also impacts, obviously, behavioral control. So attention may be what they're looking at this point, but you should be working with your pediatrician if that was something that was recommended as an area of deficit.
But the pediatrician is not going to be the only one to do any kind of eval about attention,
right,
or ADHD,
right.
And understand that everybody with all kids with ADHD have executive function challenges. Right. So that's probably why they were, you know, linking.
That's what I was thinking. Exactly.
Should I go back and request her? Okay.
Yeah,
ADHD was discarded. Okay, as a possibility. Okay, so
By the school, I'm sorry, but you're talking about by the school, because the school can't.
yeah, PPT, what meeting was held, so it was a school meeting.
Right. And so unless there was a doctor or a psychologist or someone other than a school professional who did who said that the child doesn't have ADHD, that's not a way to discard a diagnosis. A school PPT meeting with just school people can't say, oh, your kid does not have ADHD. So it depends who made that decision.
It seems from what I'm understanding here that there was a comprehensive evaluation that was provided, a school psychologist and probably a special education teacher. There's probably developmental, right, a psychoeducational evaluation, right, and developmental history. And based on rating scales that the school psychologist probably gave to the parents as well as the teachers working with the student, those rating scales can identify attentional difficulties, and they would also ask that, you know, the pediatrician take a look at some of the behavior that, you know, you may be having concerns, but it looks from what you're saying to me that the child has average intellectual ability, but has difficulty with some of the academic areas. And so therefore working primarily with a special education teacher to support those academic areas and to either develop, you know, reading program, math program, study skill program to support the intellectual ability, but help bridge that. You know, here we talk about the brain, you know, the intellectual knowledge to be able to perform with the frontal lobe and be able to successfully perform the tasks with the knowledge that your child has. So I'm hoping that your child will be getting specialized instruction.
And that special ed teacher can help with the executive
Yes,
function
exactly,
skills,
absolutely.
tying into the academics that they need.
Right, yeah, right, absolutely. And also support general education teachers who may not be aware of some of the specificity of presenting material in a modality that's maybe helpful for your child. And maybe modifying some of the curriculum so that your child is able.
Good.
Okay, yeah, great, good, okay. glad we could help.
Right, and any kind of modifications can happen with a 504 plan as well as with an IEP. So whether or not they,
correct. And sometimes they might not qualify as per the school, but if you see these issues coming up with your kid, you can employ all the resources, the supports we just discussed. You don't necessarily have to be diagnosed with anything if you see your kid is struggling. You know, do what the kid needs.
good.
Hi, I think we're all set.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Great.
Right. Good.
So what we're doing, because
Thank you.
Someone was saying we were amazing. Thank you.
Lillian. Made my day.
That's great. Well, it's our pleasure, really.
I think Shelley said that this was the first of 2 presentations that you guys are doing. Today was for little kids.
Yes.
Next Tuesday is for middle schoolers and high schoolers.
Yes.
So, you know, a lot of folks have more than one kid.
Right.
And maybe come back to watch that one. Is there a second? Is there another? Oh, okay. Just thank you from everybody.
Oh, great.
So great. So that was terrific. Thank you. I love the videos. I think the videos.
We're very happy
can
with that.
see them. They're going to be part of the PowerPoint. So when people watch the PowerPoint or show it to their husbands or their kids or whomever, they can also see the 2 videos that you had as part of it.
Absolutely.
I'll send you the PowerPoint right after this.
Perfect. And we'll send it out to everybody. So that's great. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, Shelley and South Library. Did you want to say anything else, Shelley?
Just want to thank each of you for coming, and thank you for a wonderful panelist. Thank you for your great, presentation. I learned a lot too, and invite everybody to come back next week, same time, and join us, please.
Okay,
thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a great
day. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.